was going back in time, I would focus a little bit more on the skill sets that are not just surgical or medical. And I think that those are skill sets that I picked up along the way, but I think that they would help younger surgeons or surgeons in training at an earlier stage. So specifically, I'm talking about negotiation skills. I'm talking about conflict management skills. Really leaning into that. I did a lot of leadership training throughout my career, and I think that's really important as well. But I think really leaning into that conflict piece, because that's a skill set that can be helpful at home, at work, anywhere. And people who are really good at that, I think, really do well with difficult conversations. I also think that I think that this is going to sound crazy, but I think I would take an improv class. That was never something I thought of when I was younger, but the more I think about how to approach things in a yes and way, that's sort of the core of improv, is yes and be able to leapfrog off of that, and to be curious and to be able to be agile, not so fixed. I think an improv class would be really intriguing, and I think it probably goes against the vein for many surgeons who are very, very clear about what they can do and very sort of a fixed mindset in a very, very deep area of study. So. I think over the years, I've tried to be more curious. I think maybe early on, it seemed to me like I needed to be more definitive and clear and confident about what the plan is. And certainly that's still really important stuff for a surgeon, to be clear and confident with patients in the operating room, et cetera. But I think over time, as I've advanced in my career and are surrounded by more challenging problems, it's really important to be curious. My favorite way to lead is to gather experts around a difficult problem. My example would be when I was leading research and quality for the American Academy of Orthopaedic Surgeons and was in charge of the clinical practice guidelines program that was just starting. And I didn't know very much about it. So gathering folks that knew a lot about the quality movement back in, it was probably 2008, was really helpful. I learned from them and thought about ways that we could approach this through our organization in the United States and manage setbacks. And, my skill is really taking the idea and selling it and making sure we can get the buy-in from the board of directors and things like that. But it's really great to find people who are much smarter than you are in a particular area and bring them together. And so that's what I like doing. I don't know if you've ever heard of anything called the Enneagram, but that's been something that I've been focused on in the last, I would say, 6 to 7 years. It's a concept, it's a framework to think about personality. You may have heard of the Myers-Briggs personality test. The Enneagram is a much older concept, and there's 9 different types of personality, but it's really on a spectrum of health, of wellness, and I found it personally and professionally transformative to think about my type, and I see the traps that I get into, and I try to think about really consciously top of mind how I can work on areas to be more effective. So. I mean, what I see in young surgeons is, they have a passion for medicine. So I think that in and of itself tells us we're heading in a good direction. And they want to do it differently than my generation, the generation before me did. And they want to spend a little bit more time, I think, making sure that they're all in on not just the surgical part of their life, but the family part of their life, the community part of their life, the spiritual part of their life. And trying to, figure out how to balance those things means that the type of career that people may have typically had years ago may not be the same. But the way I look at it, it's in orthopedic surgery anyway, where I am, it's maybe a 35-year career or 30-year career. You finish training, most people are somewhere in their early 30s. You're going to work into their 60s. So you have a long time to accomplish the goals. They don't all have to be accomplished in the first 5 to 10 years. So people burning themselves out with just an immense amount of career focused work and maybe setting aside their own personal wellness or their family, I think we've shown that that's not effective. I know I did that, and it caught up to me in the last year or two during COVID, feeling a little burned out. And I think that, I think that the younger generation is looking at a healthier lifestyle. I think the one thing I would say that young surgeons need to remember, though, is if you're going to take a more holistic approach to your career and your life, it's going to take longer to get to the points in your career that you might want to aspire to. And so what I see as a disconnect is when people are going to take more time and they're going to be more focused on wellness and still want to be president of everything 5 years in, or chairman of a department or something like that, chair of a department. And that's probably unrealistic. But thinking about the timeline a little differently, and going down some uncharted paths, not just taking a direct line, I think will be beneficial in the end for younger surgeons. Just keep your eye on the prize and know that it's going to still take as many reps as it would someone else who got there faster. So if you're going to go there slower, it's going to take you a little while. You still have to get through those reps of surgical skill set building and, working through organizations toward leadership. It just doesn't happen immediately. For me, it would be anything with friends. So anytime I can spend with friends is an exceptionally enjoyable time, weekend or not. If I'm going to the ultimate, it would be somewhere in the backcountry, travel, backpacking, skiing, kayaking. I have a trip in the Navajo country of the United States in this spring, and I'll be with a group of friends, but we won't see anyone else. And we'll be hiking down in the Red Rock country. It'll be gorgeous, and putting some hard work in on the trail and carrying a pack. That's what I like. Yeah, that's a tough one. I maybe tell you my favorite book this year, but my favorite book ever would be tough. My favorite author is Wallace Stegner, who writes about the West in the United States, and his Pulitzer Prize winning book is The Angle of Repose. So I would say that that's probably a lead for me. And then I've been more recently reading anything by Brene Brown, who's a social worker who's become quite popular in terms of some of her leadership work and vulnerability work. So I'll put 2 books on there. And as far as a movie, well, that's tough as well. And any given day, I'd probably give you a different answer. But my all-time favorite movie really has always been The Man from Snowy River. So if we're talking about the Australians down there, then that's, you probably laugh at me, but I love that movie. And I also love The Sound of Music. And I also love the movie Lincoln with Daniel Day-Lewis.